Don't let her get away, Mommy. Don't let her live.
I won't, Jason. I won't.
Welcome back, movie fans, as we enter the official month of Halloween. And what better choice than to tackle the famous original slasher, Friday the 13th, 1980. Now, killer mommy, killer... sit back and get your popcorn. That's what I meant, as I rapid fire some of the top IMDB trivia facts. And as always, if you learned something new today, please consider liking the video and subscribing to support my small channel. Director Sean Cunningham cut his teeth in the industry directing softcore porn and then eventually transitioned into horror with fellow porn aficionado Wes Craven, with whom he produced the 1972 horror classic Last House on the Left. The movie was mostly filmed at Camp Nobi Bosco in Hardwick, New Jersey, a Boy Scout camp. They were only allowed to use the camp after making a sizable donation to the Boy Scouts of America. Betsy Palmer, who plays Jason's mother, said that if it were not for the fact that she was in desperate need of a new car, she would have never accepted the role of Pamela Voorhees. In fact, after she read the script, she called the movie a piece of shit. She figured the movie would probably come and go very quickly, and no one would ever see it, and then it would be all quickly forgotten. Little did she know the movie would become a phenomena and would be the main thing she would be remembered for. Over the years, however, Palmer did warm up to the film. On opening weekend, this film reportedly grossed over 10 times the production cost. The film earned $39.7 million at the domestic box office on a budget of $550,000. Its worldwide gross was $59.7 million. While most of the cast and crew stayed at local hotels during the filming, some of the most dedicated, including Tom Savini and Tasso N. Stavrakis, stayed at an actual campsite. They had Savini's Betamax VCR and only a couple of movies such as Barbarella 1968 and Marathon Man 1976 on videotape to keep themselves entertained, so each night they would watch one. To this day, Savini says he can recite those movies by heart. Tom Savini was one of the first crew members on board for the film because of the producers idolized his special effects makeup in Dawn of the Dead 1978. Composer Harry Manfredini came up with the now classic Ki 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 Ma 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 vocals attached to the score. It's also his voice as well. Because the camp was closed during filming and situated in the deep New Jersey woods, the cast and crew didn't see much outside interference, but it turned out they had a very famous neighbor, rock star Lou Reed, who owned a farm nearby and would occasionally stop by and entertain the crew. Harry Crosby, who played Bill in this movie, is the son of Bing Crosby. It was the 18th highest-grossing film that year, facing stiff horror film competition from such high-profile releases in 1980 such as The Shining, Dressed to Kill, The Fog, and Prom Night. Writer Victor Miller admitted that he was purposely writing the success of John Carpenter's Halloween 1978. Director Sean S. Cunningham even approached Halloween producer Irwin Yablans to produce the film, but he declined, as he wasn't interested in doing another horror movie. Most of the location and set were already in place. The crew only had to build the bathroom set. However, few realized that only one of the toilets was actually working, so it didn't take long before those toilets had to be cleaned out. At around 19 minutes, special effects supervisor Tom Savini performed the arrow shot that narrowly missed Brenda when she was setting up the archery target. Willie Adams was a production assistant for the film. Although he spent most of his time working behind the camera, he played the male counselor in the 1958 scene and holds the unique distinction of being the first murder victim in a Friday the 13th film. The MPAA told the producers of Friday the 13th to scale back on the gore for the sequel, since they regretted the amount of gore that had gotten through in the original. This is why Part 2 is much less gory than Part 1. Director Sean Cunningham was so sure the title Friday the 13th would sell the movie alone that he took out a full-page variety ad over the 4th of July weekend of 1979, without a script or even a premise. It worked, as Phil Scuderi, the financier behind the previous movie Together 1971 and The Last House on the Left 1972, contacted him and offered to cover 25% of the proposed $500,000 budget. Cunningham went into production, hoping to raise the rest of the money along the way, until Scuderi wanted to put up the rest of the entire budget. Cunningham turned him down, as he didn't expect that the movie could earn back its budget and the actual long-term part of the deal could royally screw him, so production was halted. However, nobody else was offering to put up the entire budget, so he changed his mind the next morning. Most of the stars of the original movie were actually Broadway stars who were sent over by a Broadway casting agency. The movie debuted in a Broadway movie house. After the film's success, Adrienne King, who plays Alice, was stalked by an obsessed fan. Terrified, she asked that her role in Part 2 be as small as possible. She did not take any other roles or make convention appearances for almost 20 years after its release. Robbie Morgan was not auditioning for the film when she was offered the role of Annie. While in her office, Julie Hughes just looked at Morgan and proclaimed, "You're a camp counselor," and the next day, Morgan was on the set. Rex Everhart, who portrays Enos the truck driver, did not film the truck scenes with Robbie Morgan, so she had to either act with an imaginary Enos or exchange dialogue with Stavrakis, who would sit in the truck alongside her. The scene with the snake was not in the script and was an idea from Tom Savini after an experience in his own cabin during filming. However, there was no PETA around the film set and they actually took a machete to the real snake. Allegedly, the owner was standing on set watching and sobbing when this happened. Steve Christy goes through a sketchbook of Alice's early in the film. Adrienne King is an artist in real life, which inspired Cunningham and Miller to add it to the script. Brian De Palma, director of Carrie 1976, watched as Jason jumps from the water at the end of the movie, which the filmmakers admit was a ripoff from the jump scare in Carrie. When Carrie reaches up out of the earth and grabs Sue Snell's arm, De Palma said, "I liked it," and then added, "I saw it coming." Victor Miller wrote the script in about 2 weeks and very late into production, but interestingly, Miller never went to summer camp when he was a kid. Even so, the screenplay served mostly as an inspiration, as many scenes were improvised on set. He also wasn't a fan of horror movies. Sally Field was offered the role of Alice Hardy, but turned it down. This film is rumored to have been inspired by the real-life Lake Bottom murders in Espoo, Finland on June 5, 1960. Jason's father is never referenced in the Friday the 13th movies. However, in comics and novelizations, he is said to be a man named Elias Voorhees, who is very cruel and abusive to Jason. An unused Jason and Freddy team-up screenplay from the early 1990s, written by Louis Abernathy, features a brief scene with Elias that ends up with Pamela murdering him. Director Sean Cunningham and writer Victor Miller set the film at a summer camp because they needed a remote location, and Miller remembered the scary stories his brothers used to share of their summers spent at camp. The name Jason Voorhees was Miller's idea as well, Jason being the combination of the first names of Miller's 2 sons, Josh and Ian, and Voorhees the last name of a girl he went to school with. When Marcy is in the bathhouse looking in the mirror, she does an impression of Katharine Hepburn, a line from her film The Rainmaker, 1956. In his review, Gene Siskel famously called director Sean Cunningham one of the most despicable creatures that has ever infested the film industry. Kevin Bacon shaved his armpits for the bedroom scene. For the scene where Bill plays the guitar, Harry Crosby is actually playing his own guitar. This was Janine Taylor's first role, who plays the character Marcy. It was also her first and only on-screen nude scene. She appeared in one more film 2 years later, and then opted to leave the acting world behind to pursue a career in business. She later admitted that she never quite saw herself as an actress, and felt that her looks didn't measure up to the other girls. She ended up becoming a very successful marketing manager for the institutional investor. While Taylor appreciates the fans she still has from the film, she still feels out of place in the showbiz world. Alice is revealed to have had a brief affair with head counselor Steve Christy before moving into an on and off relationship with Bill, although Alice's age of 19 makes her 11 years younger than Steve. Friday the 13th was nominated for a Razzie for the worst movie that year. The editing for this film took 10 weeks. The producers of Friday the 13th also produced the Friday the 13th TV show, even though it has nothing to do with the movies whatsoever. It was Peter Brewer's girlfriend who helped him land a role for Steve Christy in the film. After recently being written off the show Love for Life of 1951, Brewer moved back to Connecticut to look for work. Learning that his girlfriend was working as an assistant director for the film, Brewer asked about any openings. Though he was initially told casting was looking for big stars to fill the role of Steve Christy, it was not until Sean S. Cunningham dropped by to deliver a message to Brewer's girlfriend and saw him working in the garden. It was then that he was hired. Cunningham later admitted that he hired Brewer because his assistant threatened to no longer work for him if he wouldn't. Laurie Bartram, who plays Brenda, died on May 25, 2007 from pancreatic cancer at the age of 49, 27 years after the movie was released. For his death scene, Kevin Bacon had to crouch under the bed and insert his head through a hole in the mattress. Then, a latex neck and chest appliance were attached to give the appearance that he was actually lying down. Getting the setup right took several hours, and Bacon had to stay in that uncomfortable position the entire time. For the bloody final moment, Tom Savini, also under the bed, would plunge the arrow up and through the fake neck, while his assistant also under the bed, operated a pump that would make the fake blood flow up through the appliance. To further complicate things, the crew needed someone to stand in for the killer's hand as it held Bacon's head down, and they settled on still photographer Richard Fury. After several hours of setup and latex building and planning, it was finally time to shoot the scene, and when the moment of truth came, the hose for the blood pump disconnected. Knowing that he basically only had one take, otherwise they'd have to build a new latex appliance and set everything up again, Tasso and Stravakis grabbed the hose and blew into it until blood flowed out, saving the scene. Well, that about wraps it up for another 80s gore-rama movie. Let me know in the comments if your favorite series is Halloween or the Friday the 13th series. Just note that if you say Friday the 13th, I may have to disown you. Thanks for watching, and remember to keep watching those slasher flicks, and stay cool, guys.
Ma'am, we didn't find any boy.
Then he's still there.